on the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. Jai. Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, Chapter 15, Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. 29. Yata Vatajyado Hi Atam Yata Vatadayo Yata Yogas Yatam Na Bibrati Yogas Yatam Na Bibrati Anataya Bhaveyu Sma Anataya Bhaveyu Sma Putam Ishtam Tata Sata Putam Ishtam Tata Sata Yata Bhatadayo Yata Yogasyatam Labibritai Putam Ishtam Tata Sata Yata Bhatadayo Yata Yogasyatam Labibrati Anataya Bhaveyusma Patamishtam Tata Sata. Yata Vatadayo Yata Yogasatam Nabibrati Bhaveyusma Patamishtam Tata Sata. Yata Vatadayo Yata Yogasyatam Nabibrati Anataya Bhaveyusma Bhutamishtam Tata Sata. Yata as Vata Adaya activities like occupational or professional duties. He certainly Ata income from such occupational duties. Yogasha of mystic power for self-realization. Atam benefit. Na not. Bibrati help. Anataya without value binding one to repeated birth and death. Bhavayu they are. Sma at all times. Putamishtam ritualistic Vedic ceremonies. Tata similarly. Asata of a materialistic non-devotee. As professional activities or business profits cannot help one in spiritual advancement, but are a source of material entanglement, the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies cannot help anyone who is not a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Responsibly, please. As professional activities or business profits cannot help one in spiritual advancement, but are a source of material entanglement, the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies cannot help anyone who is not a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If one becomes very rich through his professional activities, through trade or through agriculture, this does not mean that he is spiritually advanced. To be spiritually advanced is different from being materially rich. Although the purpose of life is to become spiritually rich, unfortunately, men, misguided as they are always engaged in trying to become materially rich. Such material engagements, however, do not help one in the actual fulfillment of the human mission. On the contrary, material engagements lead one to be attracted to many unnecessary necessities, which are accompanied by the risk that one may be born in a degraded condition. Unnecessary necessities. So, obviously, it's a little bit of a joke there. As Bhagavad Gita confirms, 14:18, Urdhvam gachanti sattvasta madhye tishtanti rajasa jaganya guna vrittishta ado gachanti tamasa. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. Especially in this Kali Yuga, material advancement means degradation and attraction to many unwanted necessities that create a low mentality. Therefore, Jaganya Guna Vritti Star, since people are contaminated by the lower qualities, they will lead their next lives either as animals or in other degraded forms of life. Making a show of religion without Krishna consciousness may make one popular in the estimation of unintelligent men, but factually, such a materialistic display of spiritual advancement does not help one at all. It will not prevent one from missing the goal of life. Om Ajnana Timiranda Shaganandjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmani Tanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhastam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadata Swayam Vedantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhattarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha paditanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So, this is the instructions for civilized human beings, and so it's expected that a civilized human being wants to achieve the goal of life. So, people may consider themselves civilized, but in the ultimate sense, if they don't escape, and Prabhupada says at the end, if they miss the goal of life, then what is the meaning of civilized? Which is interesting to see, civilized. What the dictionary says civilized is. And civilized implies that you are being civilized. So you may not be, but the society should be creating an environment which can cultivate civilized. Bring a place or people to a stage of social and cultural development considered to be more advanced. At an advanced stage of social and cultural development, polite and well-mannered. And this is the Cambridge Dictionary for it here. It says, a civilized society or country has a well-developed system of government culture and way of life that treats the people who live there fairly. A fair justice system is a fundamental part of a civilized society. If a person or their behavior is civilized, they are polite and behave in a calm and reasonable way. Then the thesaurus: polite, courteous, respectful, well-mannered, chivalrous. Interesting, eh? Chivalrous. So the person's not rude, he's well-mannered. He held open the door in a chivalrous way. He may be very polite and formal, but not friendly, and that's considered civil. So a person who's civil is very kind of, and that's the problem. If there's too much familiarity, then familiarity breeds contempt. So that's a mistake that can be making in society, is that the elders may be disrespected by the younger ones being too overly familiar, and then over-familiarity will eventually... Why does familiarity breed contempt? Why is that, do you think?
Familiarity breeds contempt because it blurs the lines between like people's positions. You know, if someone is being overly friendly, then somebody might, in their mind, start to see that person more on an equal sort of friendship basis, rather than someone who's in a higher status position where they are supposed to get the correct respect and things like that. So it can like degrade the etiquette.
Any other suggestions how familiarity can breed contempt? Because contempt is quite a heavy condition. You start off being very friendly with the person. How is it that it then develops to being contemptuous? Because you would think, well, if I'm very friendly, as long as I make a point of always being friendly. How can it lead to contempt? Because we're supposed to be friendly, aren't we? We're supposed to be... It's like it's saying here, being civil means the person may be very formal. Like say the Queen, for instance, right, or the King comes in and you're very friendly with him and you give him a big hug and you're patting him on the back, and then you're going to tell him a few really funny jokes. So how would that lead to contempt? Well, one obvious way is the person may feel disrespected, and if he feels disrespected, then he may not be very friendly back, and then the person who was friendly may then become unfriendly. Oh, I was being really friendly, and he's behaving like that, and then the person becomes nasty. So somebody, by being friendly, doesn't mean that you're being respectful. It can mean disrespectful, and if you get used to being disrespectful, then it's not such a far stage to become contemptuous. And the opposite of being civil, contempt, scorn, disdain, derision, ridicule, humiliation, disgrace, dishonor, ignominy, disrepute, disfavor, disregard, disgust, distaste, repugnance, revulsion, aversion, detestation, loathing, hatred, hate, abhorrence, antipathy. So you could be very friendly with somebody, but if the person you're being friendly to is the king, then he may feel you're being disrespectful, and so then familiarity becomes contempt, becomes contemptuous. Then it becomes insidious and antagonistic. So the opposite of that is honor, respect, esteem, admiration, regard, liking, love, Interesting, eh? I'm not sure I get the full thing. Oh, I see. Objection, distaste, aversion, dislike, reluctance, hatred, hostility, antipathy. Oh, so that's interesting, how it all breaks down. So Rupa Goswami, he explains different levels of respect. So we never are disrespectful, even if the person is just chanting, then that's also good. So this is civilized human beings as opposed to uncivilized or contemptuous human beings. So what happens in Kali Yuga, there's a small recession of 10,000 years where things get very good for practicing spiritual life. And then after that, there becomes such a huge amount of souls that want to take birth and engage in sinful activities that they kind of, the whole system breaks down to allow them facility, and they take birth and they start acting out their sinful desires. And then society becomes uncivilized. Explains in 11th canto that the stature of men will not grow over 3 feet, and if they live to their 30, they'll be considered an old man. And the child will be eaten straight from the womb. And men will wear their hair long and think themselves very beautiful. And the most audacious will become the leaders, the most outspoken and loud-mouthed will become the leaders, not the ones who are the most learned or qualified. So you could say, well, okay, yeah, this person's only been a devotee for 2 or 3 years, but he's more advanced than this devotee who's been a devotee for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. Because in his past life, that devotee has practiced spiritual life, so therefore he's developed a higher level of consciousness. But then that would be manifested in the devotee's character. And of course, an advanced devotee's character is one of humility and showing respect. And he'll observe the system, even if he is more advanced. He won't want to upstage those that are experienced, but he'll humbly offer his advice, and after some time, then the devotees will realize, oh, this person is actually very intelligent, we should listen to him, But that has to be earned. That's not something that can be imposed. You can demand respect, or you can command respect. So yeah, the challenge for the neophyte devotee is, can he become a civilized human being? Because he's come from an uncivilized way of life, where illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, gambling was just the normal. It's referred to in the Gita as a suchi vrata. Do you know what that means? A suchi. Suchi means clean, and vrata is a vow. So what does a suchi vrata? Any idea what a suchi vrata means? What does it mean? It means a suchi vrata. Suchi is clean, and vrata means to take a vow. So if you're a suchi vrata, what does that mean? Sworn to unclean work. 16th chapter, it's described, and it's the description of demoniac. So if you want to train people to be demons, then you get them addicted to sinful activity as early as you can, and that will cultivate a demoniac mentality. A suchi vrat, sworn to unclean work. And then devotee is suchi vrat. He takes a vow to refrain from these activities, and in that way he can become civilized. But the challenge is, can we actually commit to not falling down to these activities? So that anyway, even if we try and we fail, at least we tried. But if we do actually succeed, then these activities will become distasteful to us. But that's not initially the case generally. Param Drishtvā Nivartate. Vishaya Vinivartante. A person may refrain from activities, and then, but he still may have a taste for these things. So there's a certain amount of tension there, because he's trying to be something that he's not really. He's trying to play the part, be super enthusiastic. But all the time he's distracted by things, because the mind is uncontrolled. Although he's trying to be controlled, but unfortunately the mind is still distracted. You can't pretend to have a controlled mind. And especially in a community, then it becomes very obvious if a person has an uncontrolled mind. They can't just settle in and listen and focus. And so that's why the japa period is very important. The japa period is like the barometer of a devotee's health. And if the japa period is very disrupted and interrupted and distracted, then it means that the person is still at the stage where he has to learn how to, at least physically, can control his mind. And then he can look at doing that internally, so at least externally, to focus, to be able to just sit. Prabhupada said you should be able to sit down and chant 16 rounds and not move and not go anywhere else or do anything else until the 16 rounds are finished. Anyway, it takes time to do it, but that is what we're aspiring for. And it may be that it takes you longer. It may take you longer than 5 minutes to chant a round, but Srila Prabhupada said ideally we should chant 5-minute rounds, and our japa should flow like the Ganga, so that there's no. And he also said, Dhirashanta Maharaj was saying that the devotees struggle to chant because it's a foreign language, and Krishna, saying Krishna is an austerity, which eventually becomes a pleasure. But it takes some time. So if you're chanting 16 rounds, the first 12, maybe you're struggling. And if you only ever chant 8 or 12 rounds in one go, then you never break through into that stage. It's like a person sucking one of those sweets it's got a soft center to it. And he never sucks it long enough for the sweet to break open, and then this liqueur comes out and tastes very sweet. So the first 8-10 rounds, you're sucking on the holy name, and then suddenly the sweetness starts to come through. So that's why minimal 16, because it'll generally take an hour and 15 minutes to break through. Just like hammering against something, and then suddenly it breaks. Whereas, if you're going into a fortress and you're ramming the door, and then you say, listen, let's have a cup of tea and a biscuit. So everyone stops and having a cup of tea and a biscuit. And while they're doing that, the guys in the castle are reinforcing the door. And then they get back up again, they start trying to bash again. But if they continually bash, eventually they'll penetrate through into the castle. But if they keep stopping for a cup of tea, or they keep becoming distracted, then it gives the fortress a chance to rebuild. And then you're starting again from square one. So it's a continual and consistent absorption in a pure sound vibration. And at first it's maybe not a pure sound vibration, but after a certain period of time, the name starts to take on its transcendental qualities. And then we start to break through. I was watching someone the other day, and they were on a bike, and they'd made a hoop out of wooden planks. It was about maybe 8 foot wide, and they're pedaling up on the bike, and you have to go at a certain speed, and then they go round, and then they go upside down, and they go round. But you have to be pretty confident. You have to be pedaling toward it, and if you're not fast enough, then as you go like that, then you'll just fall. So how is that like japa? Jayananda, how is that like japa? How could that? Yeah. What was that again?
Maybe it's doing from japa, that's how the japa is.
It's not fast enough. In terms of you being too slow on the bike? How would that apply to japa? You're pedaling up on your bike and you're going to go into a wooden hoop. Because what you're doing when you're on the bike, you're defying the law of gravity. It's, so that's interesting, isn't it? So how does that apply to japa?
Well, I guess you're just kind of like, you're struggling, but you just keep going, and then one point it's just when you make that loop, you're like, let's go, so you kind of like you break through and like you have that aesthetic.
Yeah, the japa reaches a level of intensity which then breaks you free from the G-force. And the G-force for us is the mind. So the mind is dragging us all the time. We don't even realize how much the mind is dragging us until we try to resist it. And then we realize, wow, this is quite a heavy pull it's got on me. So you'd need a certain momentum of meditation to be able to break free from the G-force of the mind. So if your japa is casual and low intensity, then it's going to be very difficult to break. If you want to just get comfortable in japa and just relax and just kind of, lay back a little bit and nod off a bit and just do it as you can do it, then your japa, you're not going to reach the transcendental platform with that type of japa. And all it does is it prolongs the agony. It feels like it's going to be comfortable and it's going to make things less painful, but all it does is prolong the agony. Whereas if you pick up your bead bag and you really, okay, I'm going to give it everything I've got, then you speed up the process of getting free from the G-force. If you don't do that, then it means the whole day you're just going to be distracted by your mind. Your mind will just wander off onto any little thing, from one distraction to the next. It's called Bahushaka Hiyanantascha. Eki Hakurunandana. Eki is one. If you're single-minded, then there's one type of result. And then if your intelligence is many branched, then everything is weak. Everything is split up. And if you ever get a chance to chant 64 rounds, you'll find after you've done your 64 rounds, you can do everything very, very quickly. You're very focused. Everything's very clear. And there's things you've maybe been going to do for weeks or months or even years. Chant 64 rounds and just take off the list. Okay, that's that one done. That's that one done. Of course, to do that, you'd have to get up quite early so that you can have a whole day ahead of you. You could go to bed at 6, rise at midnight, chant till 8 o'clock, and then go through the day with 64 rounds under your belt. It means on your day off, you'd have to get
great benefit to us, and myself particularly.
the benefit of the doubt.
You know exactly what you're talking about. Just reflecting on the japa, if you have any further advice on how we can be more single-minded and focused. But there was a question I'm more interested in. Because I had to serve a devotee there, I missed your explanation on how we become contemptuous through familiarity. So can you just recap that for me, please, Prabhu?
Yeah. Did you hear that, Chayananda? Remember what it was? How does over familiarity breed contempt? So if you're very friendly, if the king comes and you're very friendly and you go up to the king and give him a hug and then sit him down and start telling him a few jokes, then the king will feel disrespected. So the way he behaves toward you won't be very nice. And then because of that, that will make you become contemptuous. Oh, why is he treating me like that? I'm being friendly to him and he's being horrible. You know? Shishikone time Shashiki. So that friction causes a breakdown. The person doesn't feel he's being respected properly. He stands off the person who's being friendly. The person who's being friendly feels like he's been snubbed, and then he becomes upset. Then he starts to think, who does he think he is, this King Charles anyway? He's just the same as us. In fact, he's worse than us. So that's how it breaks down into contempt. So how to remain focused in japa? Anybody, any tips? We've all been chanting for some time now. What have we found that works really well for us? We can maybe go around everybody. Everybody can share their tips. What really helps them to chant their japa better?
Well, I found out, yeah, that for me personally, I found out just trying to have that like constant flow, try to keep it not too fast, but like quite fast. And and also I've been trying to focus on that Krishna. So it's like, you know, like I chant the mantra and then I'm looking forward for next Krishna, you know, like to get, you know, to pronounce it better, you know, Krishna.
Yeah.
And that's been kind of helping out. And well, for me personally, I'm a sleepy person, so walking has also been quite good. But mine has this personally this idea of like, you know, I want to go somewhere, but what I'm telling myself is like, okay, I'm just gonna do this amount around, and then I will go, and then I forget about it.
Yeah.
So just you kind of try to trick your mind in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't take the mind seriously. That is a problem that we have when we chant our japa. The mind will have all these things it's moaning about, and we can just treat the mind like a child and say, okay, well, we will do that, but not right now. The other trick is the mind says, oh, well, let's make a list so we don't forget. And because you did this yesterday, and afterwards you forgot everything, so let's make a list. So a good one, when the mind says that, is no, we're going to remember Krishna. If we can remember Krishna, then we'll remember everything else that we need to remember. But if we forget Krishna to remember all the things we think are important, then they won't be important if we forgot Krishna. So when the mind wants to remember things, say, well, that's really good, but right now, are we remembering Krishna? Let's remember Krishna. Once we've got him there, he's the main adhesive. Once he's there, then everything will stick. If we've not got Krishna, then everything will just slide around. Because that's the nature of the mental platform. It's always changing. It's like looking at the world through a kaleidoscope. So with the kaleidoscope, as you turn it, it makes one set of patterns. Looks like a rhinoceros and a giraffe over by a tree. And then suddenly it turns. Suddenly the tree has become a swan. The rhinoceros has become an elephant. Giraffe has become a butterfly. So that's the nature of the mind. It's always permutating, always changing. So rather than focusing on that, we focus on Krishna, because Krishna is a constant. He's absolute, and he's the thread that everything is strung upon. So if you can focus on Krishna, then all the pearls, everything else, you'll be able to fit them all on. But if the thread's not there, then everything will just be flying around. Anyone else? Any tips for how to stay focused in japa?
So when I first started chanting, I was a really slow chanter.
Yeah.
I used to come out of the japa period in the morning program, sometimes with 6 rounds left, sometimes with 4, sometimes with 5.
Yeah.
So I used to have to chant them during the day. So after a while, I started chanting before I came to the morning program, which I still do because I'm a slow chanter.
Yeah.
So I find that if I do some chanting before the actual program starts, and I maybe have 2 or 3 rounds done, you know, that I'm not starting from zero.
Yeah.
So I get my rounds done like that, really.
And that helps to focus in your japa.
So another thing that really helps is having no distractions.
Mm.
Yeah, that definitely helps. But
You're also chanting in amongst other people, having Srila Prabhupada playing, and being surrounded by paintings of Krishna's pastimes. That's all. So that if we do veer off, at least we're still looking at Krishna. We're still listening to other devotees chanting. We're still hearing Srila Prabhupada. You know, so it's a safe environment to be in. Whereas if you ever try to chant your japa at the end of the day, and someone's got the TV on, or there's something else going on in the background, the mind is just constantly wandering off. It's looking all the time. The mind is looking for something to get involved in. And if you can't take shelter of Krishna, then your mind is like, it has to get involved in something, it has to take shelter of something. So it takes shelter of the material energy. And the interesting thing is with japa, you're coming in contact with something which is absolute. Krishna has always been there. The holy name has always been there. Everything else is coming and going. But the holy name is fixed. It's like being on one of those, those merry-go-rounds, and there's all these different horses going up and down on the poles. You know, sometimes they have like 3 or 4 rows of them, and so right in the center, it's not moving. Everything else is spinning around. So if you can focus on Krishna, then all the other things that are coming up and down and going along, you're no longer distracted by them. You're just in the center, which is eternal, and you're peaceful, you're satisfied. And then all the fluctuations that are going on, you can deal with them much better. You have a much better perspective if you're stationary. Any other tips on staying focused in japa?
Yes, following the advice of senior devotees like yourself, who are much more advanced on the path and offer, great knowledge. There's a book by Mahatma Das, which is 20 meditations or affirmations for your japa. I generally find having that single focus, setting the affirmation before I go in that it's going to be a good japa period. I'm going to be focused. That's really helpful if I say that to myself before I do it.
Yeah.
And within that focus, it becomes easier to just bring it back to Krishna. I do sometimes feel if I meditate on the names while I'm doing it, maybe if I do it a little slower at times, if I'm actually, my thoughts are absorbed in Krishna or Radha or qualities of Krishna, I find sometimes it easier to connect with that, and I feel a connection with it much more quicker. And this helps me to sort of remain focused. So that I find that helpful.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada, Mother Yamuna said the 2 most important instructions that she felt that Prabhupada had given her was have a clean bead bag on every day. And once you start, don't take the bead bag off until you finish 16 rounds. Confirmed. So if you've only got an hour and 3/4, then you're going to have to chant 7-minute rounds, maybe 6.5-minute rounds, which means your mantra is going to have to take about 3 seconds. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare. And first of all, usually your rounds are a bit slow when you first start, and then as you go on, the more you chant, the faster they get. If you chant a lot of rounds, then by the time you get like to the 32 rounds, you find the chant is going up faster, you know. You just kind of get in the groove. So it takes a little while for us to warm up. There was one Prabhupada disciple, he used to chant warm-up rounds before he actually chanted. So he'd maybe chant a few rounds before Mangalarti, just as a warm-up. And sometimes he'd end up chanting 16 warm-up rounds. And then after that, they think, okay, now I'm doing it properly. And he'd consider them as rounds. Because we do make a vow to chant 16 good rounds. We don't make a vow to chant 16 any old half-baked rounds, just get them done rounds. You know, we basically promise that we'll chant 16 good, attentive rounds. That's the vow. That's the hardest vow to keep. And if you're not doing that, then you're breaking your promise. So you at least have to be trying. You have to understand that is the sadhya. That is what I want to do. That is the goal. And you also have the faith that this is going to solve everything. Machita savadegani. If you become conscious of me, then all the degani, all the problems will go. Machita savadegani. But if you don't hear me, and you listen to your false ego instead, the sroshasi, the anxiously. If you don't hear, then you'll be lost. So it's a bit like being drowning and someone throws you a rope, and the rope is the Maha Mantra. And if you grab hold of it, then you're chanting attentively. And as soon as you're chanting inattentively, then the rope's sliding through your hands. And then you go under. You have to hold tight. Then the rope can pull you. Then you come out of the modes of nature by attentively hearing. And it takes about 2 hours to at least get your nose out of the water. So if your rounds are broken up, then the person can't pull you out so easily. So when you can imagine how attentive you'd be to holding the rope if you were drowning. Can you imagine somebody drowning, right? And they get the rope. So they've got the rope and they've got it in one hand, and then they're scrolling on their phone at the same time. You'd never see it, right? Drowning person, he'll be fully concentrating on getting out. And you don't even have to be pulling yourself out. All you have to do is hold the rope. Just hold it. Don't even try and do it better or become more advanced. You just hold it. You just be attentive. And the rope will pull you out. Krishna's pulling. He just wants you to grab a hold and he'll pull you. Machita, he's saying if you become conscious of me, chit is consciousness, mak, me, your consciousness of me, then I can save you. That's all I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you just to hold the rope. If you can't do that, then what can I do, you know? Somebody could complain, well, can't you make the rope but with a bit of a loop on it, Krishna, and just throw it over my shoulders, and then I can just relax while you're pulling me back. Someone could complain like that. But Krishna's, he's prepared to help if you want it. If you don't want it, then he's not going to waste his time. Yeah. There's a book by Chaitanya Charan, and it's 365 meditations, so that every day there's something to meditate on. And one of his favorite verses is 18:15. If you become conscious of me, you'll pass over all the obstacles of conditional life by my grace. If, however, you act out of false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So he goes, there's a few pages dedicated just to that one verse, looking at it from different angles, actually. And I sent him a message saying, I find this is funny, it's one of my favorites as well. So, yeah, if we can start the day nicely and do a few rounds even before, I find the best is to rise at 3, even if you're a bit tired. Take some rest later on. Whatever time you wake up, you find you always feel tired, generally, especially when you're older. Whatever time you wake up, even if you sleep for, like you get a day off and you decide, okay, I'm going to really sleep, and you sleep for 8 hours, 9 hours. When you wake up, you still feel exhausted. So you're going to feel exhausted anyway. You may as well feel exhausted at 3 o'clock than feel exhausted at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whenever. And if you've not had so much sleep the night before, rise, do the morning program, and then take a nap later. It's easier to take a nap later than try and read later or try and chant later. Those hours in the morning are like gold. The Brahma Muhurta is the best time to do spiritual things. And then once you've done that, your japa's good, you feel connected to Krishna, then you can deal with everything else. Great, okay, I'll leave it there. ISKCON Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Harinara Prabhu ki, Gaura Premanand. All of you ki, yeah.